It was a warm summer afternoon at Brookfield Zoo, just outside of Chicago. The kind of day where the sun cuts through the leaves, dappled light dancing across the pavement as families stroll with ice creams and strollers, laughter echoing between, animal calls. Among them, a young mother held her toddler's hand tightly. His name was Ethan, just 3 years old, full of curiosity, wearing a bright red t-shirt with a cartoon dinosaur printed on it. He had that sparkle in his eyes that only a child seeing wild animals for the first time could have. They stopped, in front of the gorilla exhibit, a massive glass-fronted enclosure bordered by a low wooden railing and a dense patch of greenery. Ethan wriggled free for just a second, leaning over the rail to get a better look. 1 second. That's all it took. The boy lost his balance. His tiny foot slipped on the edge of the platform. Gasps ripped through the crowd as he fell. Over 15 feet, crashing onto the concrete floor inside the gorilla habitat. Time froze. The sound of his mother's scream shattered the warm calm of the zoo like glass. Ethan! Inside the enclosure, Ethan lay still. Face down, arms sprawled, a thin stream of blood pooling beneath his head. There was no movement, just silence. Then, a low rumble. Something stirred in the shadows. He stepped into view. Jabari, a 400-pound silverback gorilla, broad as a truck with eyes that glowed like molten bronze. He was the dominant male, towering, intimidating, muscles rippling beneath his thick black fur. The crowd held their breath. Would he attack? Would he see Ethan as a threat or a toy? Jabari's head tilted slightly. He moved forward, slowly, each step thudding against the dirt like distant thunder. His deep eyes locked onto the small broken body in front of him. The zookeepers hadn't arrived. The gates were locked, and time was running out. The people above could only watch, helpless. What happened in the next few moments would become one of the most unbelievable stories of animal instinct and unexpected compassion ever witnessed. For a moment, all that could be heard was the distant cry of seagulls and a mother's quiet sobs. Inside the enclosure, Jabari stood motionless, his massive chest rising and falling slowly, eyes locked on the tiny boy lying in front of him. He could crush a coconut with one hand. He could leap, roar, destroy, and he was just inches away from Ethan. A zookeeper arrived at the top of the habitat, eyes wide in horror. "Don't move," someone whispered. "Don't scream. Don't provoke him." Everyone expected chaos, but instead, Jabari did something no one was prepared for. He lowered himself to all fours and gently approached the child, step by step. The sound of his breathing, deep and steady, echoed against the glass. His head tilted again, curious, studying the boy, not like prey, but like something else. Then, he reached out. The entire crowd gasped in unison. Phones trembled in people's hands. Mothers turned their children's faces away. One wrong move could end it all, but Jabari didn't strike. He touched Ethan's shoe, lightly, almost like he was checking to see if he was okay. Then, with astonishing gentleness, he knelt beside him, placing one massive arm between the boy and the rest of the enclosure, as if to protect him. People watching could hardly believe what they were seeing. "He's guarding him," someone whispered. Zookeepers scrambled to distract Jabari, afraid he might change his mind. But the gorilla didn't move. Instead, he looked up, right into the crowd, and for just a second, it felt like he understood. This wasn't just an animal reacting. It was something deeper, something ancient, something human. Narrator lowers voice slightly as soft emotional music fades in underneath. What made a wild animal choose empathy over instinct? What force told this silverback, "Don't hurt, protect"? Nobody could answer it. But one thing was clear: Jabari had made a decision, and now the clock was ticking, because the next step would determine whether this became a rescue or a tragedy. Scene. It ends with close-up of Jabari sitting beside Ethan, arm outstretched protectively. Cut to black. Text on screen. Could they reach the boy in time before it was too late? Inside the gorilla enclosure, time had lost all meaning. Jabari sat beside the unconscious child, nearly motionless, like a living statue. His enormous arm remained stretched protectively in front of the boy, blocking any other gorillas in the troop from coming close. From above, the crowd was frozen, staring through the thick glass as if watching a movie where the ending hadn't been written yet. But down in the underground control room, chaos. Zookeepers, security staff, and paramedics huddled around a monitor, watching the live feed with clenched jaws. We need to get the boy out, but we can't sedate Jabari, not with the kid so close. He's shielding him. If we go in, we risk everything. Or if we wait too long, we might lose the boy. No one wanted to make the wrong call, because here's the truth. Silverback gorillas are incredibly strong. One sudden move, one instinctive reaction, and Ethan wouldn't survive it. And yet, Jabari wasn't acting like a wild animal. Up above, Ethan stirred slightly. His fingers twitched. Jabari noticed. He turned his head toward the boy, slowly, gently, as if checking. Is he waking up? And then, something extraordinary happened. The giant gorilla began to softly thump his chest. Not in anger, not in dominance, but slowly, rhythmic, calming, almost like a heartbeat. The boy moved again. His eyelids fluttered. He whimpered, and Jabari responded. He leaned in closer, his face just inches from Ethan's. His breath fogged the boy's tiny hand. And then, softly, he let out a low, guttural grunt, a sound used by gorillas to soothe and bond with their young. Narrator softens voice, mixing awe with tension. It was as if Jabari had taken on the role of protector, as if he understood that this fragile little human needed comfort and safety. Back in the control room, a decision was made. We go in, carefully, calmly, no weapons, no loud voices. The emergency crew prepared, armed not with rifles but with bananas and blankets. Two keepers who knew Jabari personally would enter the enclosure from a hidden side gate. Above, a hush fell over the crowd as the double doors slid open at the far edge of the habitat. The moment of truth had arrived. Jabari immediately turned his head. His eyes locked onto the keepers. He stood, massive, towering, a wall of muscle and instinct. The boy, still unconscious, lay inches from his giant foot. Everyone froze. Would he protect the boy or turn defensive? The keepers lowered their eyes, avoiding direct contact. One of them, Angela, who had raised Jabari from a baby, softly called his name. "Easy, boy. It's okay. We're here to help." Then came the miracle. Jabari didn't roar. He didn't charge. He didn't even move toward them. Instead, he slowly backed away from Ethan. 1 step, 2 steps. His gaze never left the boy. And then he sat, quietly, at the edge of the enclosure, watching. The keepers rushed in, wrapped Ethan in a blanket, and gently lifted him from the ground. EMTs waited at the edge with oxygen and a stretcher. The boy was alive. His pulse was weak, but steady. Above, the crowd broke into tears and applause, and Jabari, he simply watched, silently, as the humans carried the child away, almost like he was making sure we did it right. Narrator lowers voice. Emotional strings swell. In that moment, everything people thought they knew about wild animals changed. Jabari hadn't just spared a human life. He had protected it. He had watched over it. He had chosen compassion Ethan was rushed to a nearby children's hospital where doctors confirmed he had suffered a concussion and a fractured arm, but miraculously, he would make a full recovery. His mother, still shaken, clutched his tiny hand in the hospital bed and whispered through tears, "Thank you, Jabari." The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, the footage had gone viral. Millions watched the moment a silverback gorilla became a gentle guardian. TV anchors, animal behaviorists, even celebrities weighed in. Some called it instinct. Others called it a miracle. But to those who saw it with their own eyes, it was something deeper. A reminder that empathy sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. Back at Brookfield Zoo, Jabari went back to his quiet routines. Still noble, still watchful. He didn't know. The world was calling him a hero. He just did what felt right. Narrator softly ends with a powerful line. He was a protector in a world that never expected it from him. And that day, a boy lived. Because a beast chose kindness over instinct. Scene fades out. Uplifting music plays. Text. On screen, Jabari, the gentle giant, never forgotten. Sometimes the wildest hearts are the most human. 15 years later. The Brookfield Zoo looked different now. New exhibits, new visitors. But one thing hadn't changed. The legend of Jabari. A plaque stood by the gorilla enclosure etched in bronze. In honor of Jabari, the gentle giant who reminded the world that compassion knows no species. On a quiet spring morning, a young man approached that plaque. Tall, calm, eyes filled with something between awe and quiet gratitude. It was Ethan. Now 18, he had no clear memory of that day, but he had lived his entire life knowing that he was here because a gorilla had made a choice. He stood before the enclosure, watching a new silverback resting in the sun. Jabari had passed peacefully a few years earlier, after a long life lived with dignity and wonder. Ethan reached into his pocket, pulled out a small item, a worn photo of the moment Jabari sat beside him, shielding him with his arm. He looked at it, then at the glass. "Thank you," he whispered, not just for saving his life, but for shaping it. Because Ethan wasn't just visiting. He had just been accepted into a veterinary program. He wanted to work with wildlife, protect them, because one day, one animal had protected him. Narrator closes with warmth and reflection. Jabari's legacy wasn't just about what he did that day. It was about the lives he touched, the compassion he sparked, the bridge he built between species. In the end, it wasn't about a boy or a gorilla. It was about a truth bigger than both. Sometimes the wild teaches us what it means to be truly human,